And we're going live. Oh, and we're live. Hello, folks. How are you? If you're out there in YouTube land, hello. I'm Doc Sloan. Just on a wee moment early, as always, just to check that everything's working okay. I've got some green on my sound machine. I've got a dog bothering me down at the bottom. And the picture looks quite good. So there we go. So we'll just wait till 11 o'clock to say hello. We're not doing our June Book Club tonight. We'll be coming back with that on Tuesday. Let me see. But yes, tonight is we've done this before actually, and tonight is in America. It's or today in America is Science Fiction Day, and I thought we'd have a wee chat about that and just have a wee general chat about science fiction tonight. We used to sort of get on with these wee sci-fi Fridays and stuff like that. And I love. And there's 11 o'clock, and there's Sean Wyland saying, "Good evening, Doc. Good evening, Sean. How are you? I hope you're keeping well. Happy New Year to you. You behave now, big love. I've got one dog down here. I'm on my own tonight, so the dogs are going to be coming and going as they please, generally. Go on. I've got Holly's head stuck on my leg here. But yeah, there's 11 o'clock. So it's Science Fiction Day in America, and I was kind of curious about this. And it is an there's Julian Thompson saying hi, Doc. Hi, Julian. Happy New Year to you. And just in relation to Science Fiction Day, it is an American thing. And it would be nice if it was a more international thing, I suppose. And there's Connor Quinn saying, Happy New Year, Doc, and Sean and Julian, and all Happy New Year to you, Connor. Thanks very much for joining us, folks. It was a wee bit short notice. I'm sure, as you've figured out, I've not been very well lately. And I'm actually pretty much almost better. I know I've been saying that, but I actually got a lungful of some bad stuff way back in September. Some particulates and things like that. So that's what's actually, it's not my smoking that's been causing this problem, this coughing and wheezing. I'm still coughing, as you can see, but I think I've finally managed to clear the nastiness out of my chest. So I've been really quite unwell for 3 months. I do apologize, folks. I'm hoping that 2025 will see me being a bit healthier and a bit getting on with this stuff a bit easier. But as they say, if you don't have your health, you don't have much, do you? You know. But Happy New Year to all of you, folks. I hope this year finds you all safe and well. And as said, we did this. I think we tried to do it one year, and then we actually managed to get a Science Fiction Day done. I think maybe it was last year. I'm not too sure. And the reason that, and I thought this is interesting, I suppose, that the reason why Science Fiction Day is chosen in America is because it's supposed to be the birthday of Isaac Asimov. And there's an interesting little thing like that. Now, I've got a couple of things to say about it, I suppose, just as in terms of running in with the show in science fiction, is that the first thing about it that's kind of interesting is that Isaac Asimov didn't actually know when he was born. And if you have a wee nosy at Wikipedia, you'll see that Asimov was born, as much as it says the 2nd of January. If you look at the section under his early life, you'll see he was born in Petrovichi, Russian SFSR, on an unknown date between October the 4th, 1919, and January the 2nd, 1920, inclusive. Asimov celebrated his birthday on January the 2nd. So it's a day that he picked, if you like, but it's quite a broad range of dates for a man not to know his birthday, if you like. And I suppose you've got to pick a day. And again, I suppose just if you look at the blurb on Wikipedia, you'll see that he's an American writer born in Russia, professor of biochemistry at Boston University, etc. And we get this. This is something that I absolutely loathe, and I'm wondering who the reference is from here. During his lifetime, Asimov is considered one of the big three science fiction writers, along with Robert A. Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke. Now, this is who's this? I bet it's Carl Freeman again. This is the person that the big three used to be the big four, and this is an attempt to overwrite other people's histories of science fiction, but in particular, the term the big four, as far as I know, comes from Brian Aldiss. In his works, The Billion Year Spree and The Trillion Year Spree, which are histories of science fiction. And so a couple of science fiction academics have relegated Frank Herbert, have kicked him out of the big four. The big four, as they're known, as they're known to me anyway, not the big three at all, um, are known as the big four because they became household names in America, and it's to do with their book sales, not their stories in magazines or anything like that. And if we know a wee bit about the history of the Dune publication, we actually some of the Dune novels broke bestseller lists in terms of payouts and things like that to the author. So Frank Herbert is absolutely a part of the big four. And it's just interesting to see. Well, anytime we go to look at Asimov, Heinlein, or Arthur C. Clarke, we'll find them on Wikipedia referred to as the big three. I think it's time I might do something about that, to be honest with you. And Connor saying Science Fiction Day is the day after Public Domain Day. I'd caught that actually. Buck Rogers is now a domain. I wonder who else is. Yeah, I'll be having a wee look at Public Domain actually. It's a good job you reminded me, because that's mainly how we go for the content of our audiobooks. If you like the science fiction that's in the public domain, and there's some great stuff out there, you know. Buck Rogers, I love Buck Rogers, Flash, all of these kind of things. Public domain in America a wee bit different than the UK, etc. But it's nice for stories to enter public domain, I think. And there are some stories, it's sad to say, that certain authors' works are kept wrapped up in estates and stuff. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Not that many broken lighters around here. And Buck Rogers now, they're associated with Astounding Stories now. Who's that? You're Connor. Sorry, I just lost the train of thought there. Who are you talking about? Is that the big four? I'm thinking of the big three. Yeah, I just think it's a sad thing that Frank's been relegated out of it. The other thing I suppose that I was going to say really is, of the big four, that we're going to run with, that America runs with Science Fiction Day because it's Asimov's birthday. If we were going to celebrate Science Fiction Day, I would pick a different author. As much as Asimov is very, very prolific, we have his robot stories and stuff, etc., etc. The big three, yes. Yeah, I still think it's a shame to leave Herbert out of it. I really do. But as for the original term, I must have a look. I don't know if I have Carl Friedman's book here, actually. I must have a wee look. I probably do. Right, hang on a wee second. Is that it? Let me see, who's that? No, it's Roger Luckner's, but I'm not sure if I do know it, actually. But within the science, I suppose within science fiction academia, it's a bit of a nasty place, isn't it? I tend to avoid it. But if anybody wants to take a wee look at it, I did a wee set of videos. One was on defining science fiction. As I think I call it Diogenes' chicken. You'll see some stuff in there. I think a bit of bullying and stuff like that within science fiction academia and amongst the authors as well. Who tend to be the academics, oddly enough, Oh, all right, guys. Oh, right. Excuse me 1 wee second, folks. Do you need out? Hang on. Come on. Come on. I just go. Yeah, just go. Off you go. Good girls. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Just let them out the back there. Hopefully they'll keep it quiet. Ooh la la. Yeah, so I certainly associate a lot of those writers with magazines like that as well. Particularly those American Golden Age writers, But then, yeah. So, but the thing that I was actually thinking about was, well, why choose that date? And it seems a bit arbitrary. And he has his place in science fiction. But if you were going to name a science fiction day after a writer, I think you would choose the 21st of September, because of H.G. Wells. Who I suppose in terms of modern science fiction is a much better candidate, if you like, to argue that he's one of these what we call fathers of science fiction, if you like. But there you go. So it's a choice of Asimov, and that's why we're doing this today. Really, is just to see science fiction, Christopher Crowley says, well, if you judges by media adaptations, I think Frank Herbert definitely should be top 3. Frank Starr has risen. Yeah, again, it's a thing. I thought book sales was what we were originally talking about, obviously the media. We don't see too much of these guys in science fiction, do we? In film and TV, we don't see much of Heinlein. We see very little of Asimov, hardly any Arthur C. Clarke, and we've got a little bit of Frank Herbert now. I'd say each of those authors has something on the screen, but in terms of their output, it's very little. We've got iRobot in The Outer Limits way back then with Leonard Nimoy. Sorry, folks, I'm going to have to go get these doggies in a wee second. They're barking away. Hopefully they'll calm down. And with the appalling kind of Will Smith vehicle for iRobot, I suppose. Heinlein Starship Troopers, I suppose, is the most notable. But there's oh goodness, was it Destination Moon or something like that? Was that what I watched recently? Very recently, isn't that Heinlein? Yes, from the 1950 film, another one of the great George Pal movies. I checked that out recently. Again, absolutely brilliant. Loved it. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts on Science Fiction Day are in terms of how should it be a thing to be celebrated? What day should we have it on? And I wonder who. I'm trying to figure out who's chosen the 2nd of January as Science Fiction Day. Whose decision was it? Because I've got no idea at all. Yeah. There's so Pico's Bill saying Foundation on Apple TV is excellent. I haven't seen it. I must go and try and get a download actually. I heard a bit of a mixed bag, but yeah, again, this is the funny thing. And a Rendezvous with Rama movie is in the works. Yes, and I suppose we did get to see Childhood's End, didn't we, a few years back, which I think was very, very good. And Christopher Crowley saying agreed on Foundation. Connor saying Foundation turned out pretty weak. Is that pretty well? Sorry, pretty well. I haven't seen it. So yeah, that's something that's worth checking out. In terms of the Foundation books, I've only read the original series. God, I've actually got a little bit of catching up to do with the Big Four in terms of a couple of books, but I haven't read the second two. I haven't read three. Is it 2065 and 3001? I haven't read those, but the last two books in the Arthur C. Clarke Odyssey series. But I've read The Sentinel and 2001, 2010. And what is it in terms of? There's a few. I've got a couple of Heinlein books to read, but I'm keeping them. But I'm sort of enjoying Heinlein because my wife's reading Robert A. Heinlein at the minute, and she's enjoying quite a bit. And she just finished Stranger in a Strange Land, and she's reading. She read Time Enough for Love as well, which I think are two of his best books. But she's on The Number of the Beast at the minute and struggling a bit with it. But it is that kind of book. If anybody's not familiar with it, it's a cracker. If you're into kind of metatextuality and stuff, The Number of the Beast is for you. It's the characters traveling to lots and lots of different literary worlds, if you like. It's good. It's a weird book. But it's interesting. Foundation's one of those that I saw a bit of a mixed bag about it whenever it came out, but you guys seem to think it was pretty good. I'll have to check it out. Saying that, I do have what have we got here? I've got Foundation's Edge. I've got 2 copies of that. Prelude to Foundation, Foundation on Earth. That must be the other 3. So I've got them sitting there, just haven't got around to it. I like. Here, I better read these comments out loud. That's me rather than me respond. But I'll tell you what, guys, that's something, it's definitely on my purview. I'm going to have to check it out. Is the Foundation series. There we go. I'm wondering, can somebody tell me what book it starts with? Because if it was the first Foundation novel, I think I'd be pretty interested in it, It turned out pretty well. So that's nice to hear that, guys, actually, that you thought it was really good. The original 3 books are fantastic. I love them. I've read them twice. Christopher says, I was really surprised with Foundation that while it suffers from gender swap, etc., it still tells a great story. They've got that going on, have they? That's the one thing I thought that was appalling was the gender swapping in June. A book that's got lots of it already, if you see what I mean. Just became confusing. Would love to see Bio of a Space Tyrant series by Piers Anthony adapted. I'm unfamiliar with that one, Pico's Bill. I'm not unfamiliar with Piers Anthony, but I haven't read that. Yeah, there's adaptations. I've been having a lot of thoughts about them lately, in many, many ways. And I suppose it's interesting. We've got a new Nosferatu coming out, and the history in particular of that film in relation to Hollywood and adaptations is interesting, I think. And I'm starting to have a real problem when people adapt a book. They start to just rewrite it, and I don't like this about the writers. Throw that out, and I think a lot of that was done to Frank Herbert. Christopher Crowley saying Genetic Dynasty was an improvement to the story compared to his Frank Herbert's changes, for instance, to the mythos. Improvement to the story compared to his Frank Herbert's changes, for instance, to the mythos. And Connor's saying, I like Heinlein's juveniles. I like them too. I just finished, I think maybe we were talking about this a wee while back, Connor. I just finished Podkin of Mars. And I kind of liked it. And I was reading about it has two different endings, if you like. And of course, Starship Troopers, I think. Can we call that the most famous of Heinlein's juveniles? There's an interesting, adaptation, if we want to call it that, But and sometimes when people do different things with a book, it can work, I suppose. But it depends on what the intent is of the author, And Christopher Crowley saying, first Foundation is the start. Oh, well, that's excellent. Starts with the original trilogy. Thank you. Oh, well, then I'll as I said, don't have access to Apple TV, but we'll see if we can get a hold of it. Because I do like the original Foundation series. And we talk a fair bit about it within June, within the June book clubs and stuff. That there's often a viewpoint that the June series is a response to the Foundation series. And in fact, there's been some academic work done on it. Hang on, I'll get it for you. Well, when I say academic work, these things get rewritten and put out in book form. I don't know how easy this is to get. I've never had a dust cover with it. That's Chaos Theory, Asimov's Foundation and Robots, and Herbert's Dune, the fractal aesthetic of epic science fiction, by Donald E. Palumbo, who I believe sadly is no longer with us. Donald's work's very good. Oh goodness, I really do need new glasses. Let me see. I was just wondering if I could read you the introduction to this. It might be a bit lengthy, but it is actually. But it starts here. Science itself is a crucial element that is almost completely ignored in critical assessments of science fiction as literature. Asimov and Herbert remain two of America's most popular influential science fiction writers. Their Foundation and Dune series are works against which other treatments of large themes in science fictions are and will be judged. Just how some of Asimov's fiction functions as literature is a baffling mystery, and neither author is recognized as being the most visionary and artistic writers of the 20th century, although each is a master structuralist whose works succeed in large part by accomplishing the impressive aesthetic feat of mirroring concept in every scale of narrative, architecture, structure, theme, motif, analogy, and metaphor, from the grandest story arch to the to the individual word, in a variety of subtle and intricate ways. That's a mistake there in the book. As they write science fiction, however, these authors' concepts extrapolate from scientific premises. Thus, informed appreciation of their artistry must recognize those scientific premises from which they extrapolate and apprehend the many ways in which these premises reverberate through their narratives. This study demonstrates identifying those scientific premises embedded in Asimov's meta-series and Herbert's Dune series, and examining the numerous ways in each series echoes these premises yields fascinating, even startling insight into literature's relationship to science, the profound interconnection of concept, form, and content in Asimov and Herbert's fiction, and the astonishing and previously unexplored depths of each author's genius. And his sorry, there's a wee bit here just in. Oh, sorry, I'm going to have to bring these dogs in. Oh, hang on a second. Right, you two, come on. Get and take here. Who's the back? Who's the back? Right, go play. Come on. You're so good. On you go. Come on. Here, in there. Oh, right, come on. Sorry about that, folks. Ooh la la. Usually my wife keeps a wee eye on them for me. It was just that last wee bit there in his author's note to Prelude to Foundation in 1988. Asimov announces that he has unified his Foundation series with his short stories and novels involving robots and the Galactic Empire. The most important concept in the resulting meta-series is psychohistory. Sorry, I could go on with that. It's quite an interesting introduction, actually. I'm sure I'll probably bore the hell out of his. But basically, what this book looks at is the. Where are we? Let me just see if I can get it for it. It separates. It has three aspects of Asimov's Foundation series. So the first part is on Foundation, looks at psychohistory and chaos theory. The backup plan and disguise interrelated fractal motifs of the same and descending levels of scale, and the persistence of prejudice, Asimov's crusade against bigotry as a fractal theme. On the robots and novel stories, we've got chaos theory concepts in the robot stories and novels, reiterated plots and themes and integrating the meta series, and then within Frank Herbert's Dune, plots within plots, patterns within patterns, chaos theory structures and concepts in the Dune series, the monomyth as a fractal pattern in the Dune series, and the monomyth and chaos theory. Perhaps we should believe in magic. So it's just to show you my copy. I just opened it at random. It's a great book, and there's little things that I not this in particular, actually, the self-similarity of these things. We've discussed this within the Dune Book Club as well. That you can view the Dune series as two trilogies, if you like, but it's actually kind of technically three duologies, and there's a book missing, if you like. But the God Emperor should be a bridging book. But just once again, for anybody who's interested, because you don't get a lot of books like this. I don't know how. I used to pick these books up, by the way, on secondhand online secondhand bookshops, conglomerates like ABE Books. I know they're not the sort of thing that you can find usually in on the science fiction bookshelf, if you see what I mean. But yeah, that's good to know. No, I'm definitely going to check it out because I really like the Foundation, and I'll be honest with you guys, what kept me away from it was concern that they're going to really mess this up, Let me see your comments and catch up. But first, it seems to start the original show. Oh, that's good. I'll have to check it out. I think there's some good actors on it. Christopher Christ, and Foundation actually needed some diversity. Read like a 50s American office culture. Well, there is an aspect to some American science fiction. I've been reading. I've put a wee stop to it. Let me just show you. But my reading for the year is, in particular, I've half of these read now. Well, pretty much. I'm on Grey Lensman. There we are. There really is such an it's very American, is all I'll say, and I love them. I absolutely adore them. So far, these stories, as much as your characters aren't brilliantly fleshed out and stuff, my goodness, they have they've a level of pacing that just won't let up, if you know what I mean. And the movement between technological advances, and it's like Star Wars on speed. I think on amphetamines. It's great fun, but again, it reads very American. I don't know if anybody's read. I mean, I'm sure maybe some of you are familiar with the Strugatsky brothers. Uh, Let me see, but how American fiction of the period compares to, for example, early Soviet Russian science fiction. I've got a wee collection of science fiction stories from the early Soviet era here. And if you compared them to little short stories from America, which I've done, and from Britain and elsewhere, they're so different. And it's attitude and technology really, and how people work with it. Um, and I suppose a lot of American science fiction has, I suppose, what we call that kind of Star Trek paradigm, if you like, where it's everybody working together towards a common goal, and this kind of it's all, yeah, and the and the technology is amazing and wonderful, and everybody the Russians, it's kind of about how to keep stuff working in the worst of conditions, that kind of thing, certainly based on some of the short stories that I've read. But no, there's a great attitude to the American science fiction of the time. It's very sort of gung ho and has a bit of the pioneer spirit to it as well. Lensman in particular, I think you've got the writer engaging in what he does, and again, he's a scientist really. Just prior to World War II, and then obviously after the war, and you can see the war's influence on things like Lensman as well. But yeah, it's Star Wars on speed. I've missed a couple of comments. I'll back up, but I mean, I love it. It's the reason why I stopped reading them is because I've been reading quite a lot of stuff lately, and I decided that I've got that many books on the go. I wanted to clear a few. No, not meaning to sort of skip out of sci-fi, but I'm happy to talk. But this is the book that's kept me sort of. I'm not, as you can see, I'm not not too far from the end of Fire and Blood. It actually got on my nerves a bit the other day, just with the descriptions of violence in it. And I put the book down just because I don't need that level of description. Something that's been starting to bother me a wee bit lately. I think there was something about it is the level of what to read. Sorry, I'll recapitulate my thoughts. The thing I'm starting to have a bother with George R. Martin is understanding that I'm reading fantasy. And also understanding that it's being written in I suppose in a realistic way, in a style of literary realism, isn't it? Which is not something that lends itself well to fantasy, because the whole point of it is to create an escape, if you like. But it kind of reminded me a wee bit on some of the Viking sagas. And there's a point where you can read about violence in such a detail that it just gets on your nerves a bit, I think. Well, maybe that's too kind a way of putting it. But it's a difference in certain writers today. I suppose there's an attitude. I remember reading something about Neil Gaiman said in Tiger? The Star's My Destination. Where would it be? You should have it. There you are. Listen. And it was a very curious thing, I thought. Let me just see. It's a Neil Gaiman introduction, and I did not like it at all. And again, I suppose an author that you get to put little sort of introductions, they all do it, don't they, on books? Star's My Destination, as Tiger is also known. He says here is the perfect cyberpunk novel, etc., etc. Here we go. This is it. Here, just to sorry, I know I've just jumped off a wee bit here, but I don't agree with this at all. Highly recommend, by the way, folks, if you've not read this book. This is science fiction royalty. It's really good stuff. Just to read this wee bit. This is from the end of the introduction to Star's My Destination by Neil Gaiman. What makes the Star's My Destination more interesting and 10 years on less dated than most cyberpunk is watching Gully Foyle become a moral creature during his sequence of transfigurations. I'll not read that wee bit to not give away the plot. Tiger controls first and in control. Blah, blah, blah. It's this bit here, a word of warning. The vintage of the book demands more work from the reader than she or he may be used to. Nonsense. Were it written now, its author would have shown us the rape, not implied it. Its author, just as we would have been permitted to watch the sex on the grass in the night after the Goffrey Martel, before the sun came up and she saw his face. So assume it's 1956 again. You're about to meet Gully Foyle and to learn how to John. So a word of warning: this book demands more work from the reader than he or she may be used to. What absolute crap! Were it written now, its author would have shown us the rape, not implied it. Crap. Neil Gaiman would have shown you the rape in detail, but to suggest how one writer would write, I think is very wrong, and it's entirely speculative. It's that kind of thing. There's levels of things that you can describe with words. So I just went off on one. That's the thing that bothered me a wee bit on Fire and Blood, and I see a wee bit just too much violence sometimes and things. But I'll catch up with your comments there, folks. But if anybody does get a copy of this, if you haven't read this, by the way, this is one of my. I've done a wee video on this. It's under Tiger, its original title, and couldn't recommend it more. I would recommend not reading. If you get an introduction by Neil Gaiman, don't waste your time with it. It's a load of crap. Just nonsense. A little bit of what's the word, transference there? Is that it or something like that? I don't know. Let's catch up with your comments, folks. Pico's Bill. I hope I'm saying that right. Pico's Bill. It says great book series, Bio of Space Tyrant. Highly recommend. Sounds fun. Bio of a Space Tyrant. It's got that sort of. I like that. Yeah. What is it? Boyhood of a Super Fiend. If you know Young Death. There's a good story on young Judge Death from the Judge Dredd universe. It's called Boyhood of a Super Fiend, and it's just brilliant. If it's something like that, Bio of a Space Tyrant sounds interesting. I've it scribbled down, Pico's Bill. Thank you very much. I'm always happy for recommendations. The Martian Chronicles movie was not as good as the book. That would have been a good story to adapt again to screen. Was there a movie? Bloody hell, I didn't know that. I must have missed that. There's the old Martian Chronicles as a made for TV series, isn't it? 3 parts with Rock Hudson. I've got it here. I love it and adore it. Probably for not the same reasons as other people, but I love the models in it. Particularly, I love the music and I love the feel of it. And it's an interesting story, the Martian Chronicles, isn't it? It's it's not big. It's not not space war and all this kind of stuff and laser beams. It's a very thoughtful story, I thought. But yeah, the Martian. I'm not sure if you're talking about the same thing. I didn't know there was a Martian Chronicles movie. Because I'm that's one of the Bradbury stories I'm rather fond of. We did a wee Ray Bradbury's short story there. Checking out my new teeth, Pico's Bill, for Halloween. Put it up on the station here. Not as good as the book. Oh yeah, I mean that's fair enough. When is anything as good as the book? I've actually encountered one this year, I think, where the film was better than the book. I think. Let me see. What the book I'm talking about is. Here we go. Now, I don't know. I would be making videos on all these kind of things if I wasn't doing the book club, to be honest with you. But there's just no time. It's one or the other. I like this book now. I'm not going to slag it off, but I have my problems with it. But this is Jaroslav Kalfar's Spaceman of Bohemia, and you can see the big Netflix sticker on it there. Up at the top, shortlisted for the Arthur C. Clarke Award, and I think this is it a first novel? I believe it is, and it's worth reading. It's very good. There is a real problem with it, I think, and that's been turned into a film called Spaceman, starring Adam Sandler and Kerry Mulligan. The film is very, very good. I really enjoyed it. I like a bit of emotion in my stuff, if you like. And quite rightly, I think the film cuts off the back of the book. And it's got a lot to do with the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, and it's a personal story, and it's a very good book. But there's a point in it, I suppose, near where things change. The astronaut Jakob returns to the Earth. At that point, things just become the book becomes unbelievable, sadly. And if it was handled in a slightly better way, it was doing good on its sort of science fiction side, if you like. But the back end of the book is quite harsh, quite depressing. And the film did a much better thing with it, I thought. So if anybody hasn't seen the film, Spaceman, I really enjoyed it. It was one of my highlights of the year. It got my wife to watch it. She really enjoyed it. It's not everyone's cup of tea. It's kind of they focused really on more of the love story element of it, and the loneliness, and why Jakob is the way Jakob is, if you like. But it was a great film, and it's a good book. But I thought that the film dealt with the source material well. It didn't muck around with it. Just decided we're not going to throw all this really heavy stuff at you at the end, because it wasn't pleasant to read, if you like. It was interesting, well written, and informative. But it's definitely an example where the book isn't quite as good as the film, I thought. And again, that sort of science fiction maybe is not everybody's cup of tea. And I know Adam Sandler's not everybody's cup of tea, but I really enjoyed it. And I thought that's science fiction with a good heart, if you like, But yeah, seldom a book is better, or seldom a film or adaptation of a book is better. Because it's so often, the medium is so limiting. I think cinema's very limiting. TV not so much. Carlos Crisalis said, just catch up with your comments, folks, and keep on coming. It's Science Fiction Day. If you've got any sci-fi questions for me or anything at all, or comments, or just what you're reading at the minute, recommendations, anything at all, because I'm sci-fi mad here. I love it. There's not enough. I wish sometimes I had 2 heads and 4 arms and I could get a bit more reading done. Carlos is saying, hi Carlos, how you doing? I may be in the minority, but I enjoyed Asimov's writing. Not many authors can write an interesting story without sex or violence. Yeah, I like his writing too. It's of the big 4, I'd say that there 2 of them are good writers and 2 of them aren't. But that's not to say that they're bad writers. They're highly competent writers, but they're how they go about their stuff, if you like. And the 2 that aren't good writers, they're great. They're good storytellers. They've got great imagination, and they know how to craft a story. Are Clark and Asimov. The 2 much better writers are Heinlein and Herbert, just in terms of skill, literary skill, wordcraft, and stuff like that. 3 out of 4 of them are scientists, if you like. Herbert's the only proper writer. He's the only journalist. But it sort of shows in their writing. I can understand that. Put it this way, I've got like several degrees in the humanities, and I've got also a science degree. I'm a classicist. I'm a computer scientist. What else? I've got an English historian. I've got different hats that I wear. I find it I have to write different ways, if that makes sense. Doing computer stuff's entirely anal. No flowery language, nothing. Just reports and stuff like that. Classics and history, evidence-based, literature. Oh, off we go, flowery as you like. This is the one thing, folks, for anybody who wants to read my PhD, by the way, it's been put up on the good folks over at Jack Urutu have given it a home for me. So if you actually want a copy of the document, you can go there and get it. But something I'm really bad at is being succinct. I feel like I'm very bad at writing abstracts and brief introductions and summaries. I'm useless at it especially when you're writing things like 100,000 words. To put that into 300 words is, I find, ridiculously difficult. I was so pleased that Soutpot over at Jack Urutu managed to put a much more succinct and less waffly abstract on my PhD. I was delighted with it, because all it should just say is, look, here's a a document that looks at evolution, ecology, and the messianic hero in June. Full stop. End of story. But I'm just so waffly with it. But I like all of the big four's writing. I'm just saying that there's levels, if you like. But particularly with Clark, with the big four, particularly with Clark and Asimov, what I think they do better is the short story, and they're much more succinct, and they're good at working with short material, or the short story format. I think Herbert is a person. Frank Herbert is on record is that he has bother with it. And often what a lot of Frank's and again it works this way, I suppose, in the day. A lot of his early novels are actually short stories being serialized, and then he upgrades them, for example. So you'll find them in amazing stories and things like that. Green Brain's a good example. You'll find it in the magazine and then expanded a bit for novel. Frank does that a lot, but I've got, I think, some quote in there in the PhD somewhere where he talks about struggling with word length. And it's not the big stuff, as I'm sure we could figure out from Frank Herbert's work. He's no bother writing enormous books, but he found it tricky to write shorter stuff, and I'd be the same, to be honest with you. There's a real skill, and as much as we talk about the floweriness or whatever, how expressive their writing is, for Asimov and Clark, there's a real skill in being very succinct with your language. The economy of language is what I call it, how to get your story across in the right way. But the first ever, is it the first one, I think? Let me see. First ever story I read by Arthur C. Clarke is either the 9 Billion Names of God or An Ape About the House. Where's Of Time and Stars? Goodness knows where it is. I really need to sort my books out. The first science fiction book I ever bought was Of Time and Stars, and those are the two. I think they're the two first stories in it. But I remember reading the 9 Billion Names of God, and going, okay. But when I read An Ape About the House, that's a story I wish was in the public domain. I'd love to read it. I laughed my head off at the end of it. It was so funny. And I had no sense of that coming, if you know what I mean, in the language that Arthur C. Clarke was writing. It was just a brilliantly funny short story. And it all came together, the punchline, if you like. It was almost like a joke. This little story that had off he goes telling the story about this little chimpanzee and how it paints. And the punchline, and the punchline's not even given to you. You figure it out yourself, you just laugh. And it's more about human nature than anything, But I enjoy Asimov's writing. Myself and my wife were just discussing him yesterday in relation to the laws of robotics. We're wondering why such laws aren't being applied to AI at the minute. Because there's been a couple of scary stories come out in the news about AI. Yeah, and I think it's really. I'm starting to think that there should be a moratorium on it, and that we need to get some laws in. And for that very reason, Asimov's influence might be hugely important. For anybody who doesn't know, by the way, there are 4 laws of robotics, but the original 3. If you do a wee bit of research, most people will tell you that Isaac Asimov came up with the 3 laws of robotics. He won't tell you that. He'll tell you that it was him and mostly John Wood Campbell Jr. If you ask John Wood Campbell Jr. about it, he'll tell you Asimov came up with it. If you ask Asimov, it's a back and forth between the two, and I think that they possibly thrashed them out. But I think Asimov's being kind there, to be honest with you, to John Wood Campbell Jr., the editor of Astounding, Amazing Stories and Analog and stuff like that. Which is kind of interesting. So it's who I guess between the two of them, but who really did come up with them, I think we'll maybe never know. But they're both on record talking about it. Star Wars on speed, brilliant. Lensman is like cowboys and Indians in the sky. Yeah, well, it's got very much that aspect of the Western as well, doesn't it? But yes, it's so fast, and that's what I put it down because I've been tearing through them. And that book's enormous, by the way. It's got all of the Lensman stories in it. So I'm on Grey Lensman at the minute. And this is this really strange book. It has such a I got this off Amazon, but I think it's been printed to order. and the material on it, the feel of it's weird. It's like a rubber book, and I think parts of, I don't know, if you rub your hand over it, you can feel particulates coming off it or something. I don't know how long it'll last. When I opened it, it split because they've tried to fit so many. Literally haven't read it, opened the book and split, and it split with a tear in the page. But if I can get it open at a sort of, there we go. You can, oh, sorry, knocking stuff over. You can get the idea of the level of print in it. There's not much, so it needs a certain type of reading glasses. But I'm pretty much around halfway through, and I just thought I'm enjoying these so much. But it's I like to kill a couple of books, get them out the road. And Fire and Blood was enormous, so I thought I'd get it out the road because I have a whole shebang of sci-fi books that I've kind of started and I'm reading at the minute. And because I'm reading so many of them, I'm not making much headroom with any of them. So it's that. I feel like it's one of those things where you think you've read nothing all year, and because you're reading several books at once, then suddenly you've got them all read, and oh, I've read a bunch, But I'm really looking forward to getting back to that. I just thought I needed a wee bit of a break. But yeah, it's the level of technological development and jiggery pokery and upgrading your ships and but especially descriptions and stuff. And I absolutely now can see where Star Wars certainly takes a lot of its some of its design ideas from. And I've also managed to figure out now, having read Xi Shenlu's books, I've got the references in there now to the teardrops and stuff. They're in Landsman as well, and almost a lot of the ships in the Star Wars, in Landsman, look like the Death Star. If you want, there's spheres and teardrops and stuff. It's incredible, and it is. It's out of it. It's just wow. It's bonkers. I'll tell you something. It would make a hell of a TV show or hell of a movie. There's been one of these. One of the Landsman stories has been turned into a Japanese anime. It's part of an old run of the anime back in the old, I don't know, would it be the 80s or 90s, but possibly. It was Children of the Lambs, right down here. So it's available as an anime if anybody's not seen it. How closely it is to the story, I don't know. But yes, indeed, Landsman. There's your Jedi Knights, all lots of things. There's so much in Landsman, to be honest with you. It's a very important series in science fiction, I think. It's like a smack in the face how obvious some of its influences are, but you can see, oh, here, I've seen that elsewhere, But it's really good. Isn't that a great book anyway, regardless of how it was made, as long as I can get through it once without it falling apart on me. But for a book, it's a series that I've always had trouble getting. Was never able to get the first book, and because there's a couple of series of books like that. It's a bit different now. All I've got to do is really go look for them, I suppose. But it's I suppose it's from a different era when I was a kid. Pardon me. I used to get my books from the library. They'd always have book 3 or book 5, but never book 1, and so you always kind of held off, reading the others because you didn't want to kind of. You just wanted to get the story from the beginning. There's other writers like Michael Moorcock, for example, and all of his stuff that you could just grab any one of them, regardless of what order they were in. You could read them self-contained, I think, But I often find that frustrating about Michael Moorcock as well. I'd like to read all of these, But yeah, they're great fun. Very much enjoying it. Let's catch up with your comments, folks. And again, any sci-fi that you've had this year. I wrote a scribble a few things down to chat about tonight as well, just to make sure I had stuff to gab about. What I've done with it is nope. Hang on, does it turn the book upside down? Well, I did write it down somewhere. Oh goodness, wonder what I did with it. Oh, I can remember them easily enough, I suppose. Excuse me, it'll be a quick second. I'll quickly scribble them down again. Oh, here. I got knocked it on the floor. There we go. No need to do that. There we go. That's all. So I'll just catch up with your comments, folks, and then I'll have a wee read through some of these kind of things. Star Wars on Speed by Lensman's like Cowboys and Indians in the Sky. Connor's saying, I felt like Dune was a reply to the likes of Lensman. Yeah. The Holtzman field, kind of how spaceship travel works in Dune. Yes, indeed. It's everywhere. I think Lensman's almost ubiquitous in its influence on science fiction. And it does come from that golden age, if you like, that era of things like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and even Superman, the late 30s. Seemed to be quite a very interesting little time just before the war in terms of coming up with stuff like this. Britain, particularly pre-war, I suppose some of the magazines started going and everything's put on hold until after the war. Yeah, I think Dune's a reply to a lot of science fiction, as well, Connor, and in particular, it's oh god, I'll have to dig this out. It's the technological toy syndrome, isn't it, that Frank Herbert really doesn't like. Frank Herbert has a bit of a problem with technology. He calls it the Presbyterian fixation, and in particular, he points to Isaac Asimov when it comes to this. Their types of stories is that the belief that new technology will solve your problems, more technology, more of it, and this kind of thing. It absolutely is at the core of the Lensman. It's the Lensman series is just here's tech, right? It's okay. Bad guys got tech. We upgrade, beat the bad guy. Bad guy upgrades, beats us. We upgrade. It's just back and forth, and the technology is already pretty full on. If you know, and the goodness, the fights and stuff in Lensman are pretty, and I'll tell you what else, Connor, is that they're certainly if you read the culture and the way the culture ships fight, there's a sense of that, the fields and the from the the Lensman again. And I always thought that the culture was a very deliberate attempt to return to the how would we put it, to the sensibilities of golden age science fiction, but with much better writing and characterization, if you see what I mean. But I think certainly in Banks's The Culture is a nod in some ways to that stuff. But yeah, you could, and I'm looking forward to getting through it to see how much more they can push this. Because if you want to consider it as Star Wars on speed, then I needed to come down from it. It's just frenetic. But I think if you could take the Lensman stories and translate them to screen, I think you'd have a fantastic show. And it's another one of these things that if you often wonder where Hollywood and stuff is on these kind of things, where their ideas are at. They're still making films about from science fiction in the 50s. And even earlier, and it seems to be 50s, 60s, that area. I don't know, as much as there's other modern stuff, we don't often see a lot of modern writers hitting the screen, and they tend to focus around there, But I've been watching some good old-fashioned 50s B movies and loving one. I can't remember what it was called. I watched the giant spider one the other day. It was so bad, it was great. Pico's Bill saying, I wonder why Edgar Rice Burroughs never got enough popularity to make it into the big 4 or 5 different period. Pico's Bill. That's why. He's huge, Edgar Rice Burroughs. But I've been thinking about this as well. Again, authors with their time, but could you excuse me a wee second, folks? I'll be right back. Sorry about that, folks. Do apologise. Had the wrong take out there. Oh, now let's see. Where were we? Yeah, Edgar Rice Burroughs. Yeah, Pico's. But I love Edgar Rice Burroughs. Need to read more. There's a sort of comment about him. Yeah, in 1950 he died. How old was he? 74. He's so prolific, isn't he? Goodness gracious, Barsoom, Tarzan. What have we got here? The Pelicanar series, the Venus series, the Castback series, the Moon series, the Mucker series, other science fiction, jungle adventure novels, Western novels, historical novels, other work. I'm a prolific writer. I think he's really in a different period of time, really, from those guys. And I think it's probably just in terms of the Big Four is a description by Brian Aldiss in his science fiction history books, The Billion Year Spree and The Trillion Year Spree. The criticism of Brian Aldiss is that he was trying to invent science fiction history rather than studying it, which was a comment made by someone who doesn't know what history is. Ridiculously stupid comment to make. Brian Aldiss's Billion Year Spree and Trillion Year Spree are histories of science fiction, and they're perfectly valid. A history is an inquiry into something. That's it. End of story. So you don't make history, and history isn't something that happened in the past. History is an inquiry to look into something and find out what happened, if you see what I mean. But Edgar Rice Burroughs, I mean, I would put him more in the time frame of the likes of Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard and people like that. I would pile him into that category. I think it's the same thing with by the way, and I don't know why. Ray Bradbury, for example, why he's not there. But I think ultimately the reason is that the Asimov, Clarke, Herbert, and Heinlein really do focus within science fiction specifically. The other guys are, here, there, and everywhere. They write westerns, they write fantasies, they write science fiction, they write horror. But certainly Edgar Rice Burroughs is a household name. I grew up watching. Now, who would be my Tarzan? My Tarzan would be Johnny Weissmuller, the Olympic swimmer. Now, goodness, those, I don't know if anybody remembers those. God, there's been that many Tarzans. We haven't seen it. I was going to say we haven't seen a Tarzan in a while, but no, Tarzan's still about, isn't he? Gracie Greystoke, yeah. Tarzan is the ape name of John Clayton, Viscount Greystoke. That's Tarzan. I love them. Let's see, Tarzan in other media. Starting with Tarzan the Ape Man in 1932 through 12 films until 1940, it was anchored by former Olympic swimmer Johnny Weissmuller. That's again these old I suppose I call them the Saturday morning serials. I absolutely adored those. Loved them. Still, I would happily sit down and watch any one of those again right now. But I think it's more of a. I think the Big Four it's a different thing. I think it's really just specifically science fiction writers. There's another interesting thing, Pico's Bill, is that particularly with the new wave of science fiction. So Burroughs is passing away in the, was it the 50s? Did we say there? But particularly with what we call the new wave of science fiction, there's a comment that. I think it's by Michael Moorcock, slagging off the kind of establishment within science fiction writing and criticism in Britain. And he's attacking people like Kingsley Amis, who wrote New Maps of Hell, and Robert Crispin, and a couple of these guys that kind of ran some sort of the sci-fi stuff in Britain, that they were more interested in that the difference in the new wave was that they were more interested in Burroughs. Oh no, sorry, it was a criticism of the new wave, wasn't it? I think possibly. I must look this up again. There's one of them slagging off the other, but I'm pretty sure it was Michael Moorcock slagging them off, and saying that they were more interested in Burroughs, the Edgar Rice Burroughs. The new wave, were not interested in Edgar Rice Burroughs. We're more into J.G. Ballard, I think, wasn't it? Who am I thinking of? Burroughs. Bear with me a wee second. I'm sorry, it's William S. Burroughs. That was it. It wasn't J.G. Ballard. It was we're more into William S. Burroughs than Edgar Rice, that kind of thing. And they were sort of comparing the two authors as one being old-fashioned, the old guard, if you like. But you see, again, maybe some of Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff I would maybe consider. Let me just quickly have a look at publishing dates here. Probably part of the fin de siècle. When did he start publishing books? Burroughs was an explicit supporter of eugenics and scientific racism. There you go. There's no reference to that at all at the bottom of his entry in Wikipedia. Has somebody just made that up? Let me see. Literary career. Aiming his work at the pulps under the name Norman Bean to protect his reputation, Burroughs had his first story, Under the Moons of Mars, serialized by Frank Munsey in February to July 1912. Issues of the whole story. Under the Moons of Mars inaugurated the Bar Sims series, introduced John Carter and Burroughs $400 or $11,922 today. First published as a book by A.C. McClurg of Chicago in 1917. Entitled The Princess of Mars, after 3 Bar Sim sequels. Has appeared as serials, and McClurg has published the first 4 serial Tarzan novels as a book. So yeah, he's sort of writing the early 1910s onwards. He's writing at the end of the fin de siècle, if you like. I would probably pigeonhole him in there if you have to, but it's kind of prior to World War II, I think. Prior to World War One, really, I suppose. But World War One is seen as roughly the end of the end of the cycle, if you like. It's this great period of literature, from the sort of mid 18th century up to about the First World War. Then you've got the war and a bit of hoo-ha, and then we get the odd thing in between the war, I suppose. And that's where science fiction really starts to take off in the American magazines and things. After World War One, and then you get that gap of World War Two, and then we get this explosion of sci-fi at post-war, and a lot of it up to the 60s probably is heavily influenced by the war. I would certainly say that Landsman is, but then you get the 60s and the new wave, But yeah, I mean, he's a great writer. I haven't read tons of his stuff, but Edgar Rice Burroughs, someone I'd happily pick up and read, And again, the Bar Sim series is one that I'm looking to get all the way through. So Pickles, but he's an author that I still read and still want to read. And again, to me, the Bar Sim series is I'm basically hoping to pick up. I think it's a lot more easier to get though. Pick up something like this. I want them all in one book, and I'm going to tear through them, which is a great way to read things like that, So it's good to know. Connor Quinn said, I felt sometimes the characters of Ice and Fire weren't human. They were so cruel. Yeah, there's the bit that I hit the other day was just at the end of, it's at the end of it all. And it was just descriptions of what soldiers do, basically. I mean, I'm well aware of stuff like this, but I had no need to have it. I'll not tell you what he was describing. But I'll use the word infanticide, and it wasn't pleasant to read. And again, just depends on what you've seen in life and that kind of stuff. But it's a bit like what we were talking about Alfred Bester. There is no need for an author. People have what we were talking about Neil Gaiman is that the character in this book, Gully Foyle, who is arguably one of science fiction's greatest protagonists and antagonists, is not a nice person, and he's a rapist. He rapes a character in this book, but in no way are you given details of that rape. Does that make sense? And it's more powerful because of it. And Gully Foyle is an everyman who's left to die and transforms instantly. And it's just I'm going to kill everything. I call this the Iliad of science fiction. It's about if you know the Iliad, It begins with Sing Muse of the Wrath of Achilles. This is about the wrath of Gallifrey. That's its major theme. But he's an everyman. And again, to listen to an author like Neil Gaiman say this guy would describe this rape in great detail to you today is absolute shit. I find it offensive, actually, that he's even bothered to say that in his book. I think it's an insult to the author, quite frankly. Neil Gaiman would certainly have written about the rape in detail, and if it was in one of his comic books, he would have probably had the artist show it to you in graphic detail. One of his stories, Neil Gaiman's stories, is heavily features rape. It's what is it? Let me see. Bear with me a wee second. Calliope, isn't it? The Muse. That's quite a brutal story, and it's illustrated not particularly, but it's something that an author has. If you have skill with words, you can paint a picture without being too graphic. If that makes any sense. You can leave things in fact. Frank Herbert's great at doing it. We were saying that he leaves things hanging for the author or for the reader to find out or wonder about. I'm not going to give you all the answers. This kind of thing. Some things are more impactful by you not seeing them. But yeah, it's a bit. Yes, indeed, it's barbaric. It's very, very cruel. And I think reading the George R. R. Martin Fire and Blood this book is kind of presented as a history, if you like. That it's hard to see the characterization of any given character, except perhaps maybe the historian himself and Mush, the other historians' characters, I think. But everyone's almost of the same brush in Fire and Blood. And the reason why I thought it was interesting was because one of the other books that I'm rereading again is Herodotus's Histories. Really just to do with stuff with the book club, really. I'm trying to get through some classical books to be able to present stuff to the book club, but in particular, I picked up my copy of Herodotus because it has lots of stuff about oracles in it. And again, I've sort of put it down to get through this big book. I just, and do you know something? I find it's a good read. I've been whenever I get a chance to stop at it, I've been moving through it. But it's the Viking sagas, the Icelandic sagas. I'll show you this, folks. In fact, probably wonder where I did stop. Still on the Arabian Nights as well. I'm reading lots of big, chunky books. That's why it's taking me so long. This is a gorgeous book. Penguin Classics have brought out a wee while back, they brought out these deluxe editions. There we go. This is my copy. Sagas of the Icelanders, prefaced by Gene Smiley. And it says, here's the poetry of the North Atlantic, a testimony to the human spirit's ability not only to endure what fate may send it, but to be renewed by experience. Seamus Heaney. Look at the paper. Can you see that? Gorgeous. No, I don't know. Did I hope I did. Yeah, I did. I folded it. I get told off for doing this. The thing that bothers me in this, so where did I stop? The saga of the people of Vansdal. It was the violence in it. It was too much violence against children. But in terms of a good read, it's something that because of that I'll put it down. I'll come back to it. But goodness, I read a good bunch of these. I got Egel's saga, the saga of the people of Vansdal, the saga of the people of Laxardal, Bolly Bollison's tale, the saga of Hrafnal Freysgodi, saga of the Confederates, Gisli Sureson's saga, the saga of Gunnlaug Serpent Tongue, the saga of Ray the Slide. Then we get on to the Vinland sagas, the sagas of the Greenlanders and Eric the Red, etc. So yeah, it's a good read if you're into I love sagas and epics and things like that, but some are more violent than others. If you have a very good translation of the Iliad, you'll find it's extremely violent as well, But yeah, different times, different peoples, I suppose. But yes, I would agree. They're very cruel. And Burroughs deserves a reboot, says Connor. Mastermind of Mars is in the public domain today. And Pico's Bill going, agreed, Connor. I totally agree with you guys that old sci-fi is great sci-fi. I don't know, maybe it's a thing of the times and how we let books fall away. I think a lot of kids' literature these days that children do not read. I think I just picked up a new English Lit student, and I'm delighted to say that everything that they're studying I've read. And but the English literature curriculum, there's no comedy on it at all. There's nothing funny. There's the odd sci-fi, but in fact, we're going to be studying Frankenstein with this student, hopefully, and which is always a good book to look at. Frankenstein, for anyone who's not read it, is one of those books that's considered to be the first science fiction book. I would say incorrectly, but the fact that that's the book that really is the basis of a lot of Brian Aldiss's arguments for that. It's him that puts Frankenstein forward as being the first science fiction book, But I'm looking forward to that. That should be good. Okay, let's see. Where did we get to? Sorry, just to catch up with your comments, folks. There's loads. I'm lost. Bear with me a second. There we are. Masterman. That's it. And agreed. Connor says Pico's Bill. There's Joseph Smith, June fan saying, howdy, Joseph. Happy New Year to you. If I haven't said Happy New Year to any of you folks out there yet, Happy New Year to you. I hope this year is a good one for you. Julian Thompson said, I've been reading The Left Hand of Darkness. It's excellent. It is. I read that book at university. Julian, it's very good. I've got totally into Ursula K. Le Guin. And I absolutely adore her writing, and I can't wait to get more of her books. Let me see, what have we got? I've read recently, not too long back, The Lathe of Heaven and The Dispossessed, both of which were fantastic. And the word for world is forest. For any Dune fans out there, if you read that, it'll be a wow. It'll be a whoa for you. There's a lot to connect Dune to the word for world is forest. But yeah, it's a good book. It's an interesting exploration of gender from a different time, I suppose, when you could explore things like that without having nutters go mad at you. Connor saying, Bio of a Space Tyrant sounds fun. Connor Quince's Left Hand of Darkness is unforgettable. Howdy, Joe. Short stories, great way to read science fiction. Indeed. It's great to get some good compendiums. Somebody was asking me about that a wee while back, Connor. Just that could I recommend good compendiums of short stories in science fiction? So maybe the next Sci-Fi Friday that we do, what I'll do is maybe lift them all down and see what we can find. But I've got all sorts of the compendiums and anthologies and stuff. And some writers, it's a good way to get an introduction to them. If you haven't read The Culture, for example, there's by Ian M. Banks, there's a collection of short stories called The State of the Art, and 3 or 4 of them are culture stories. It's a good introduction to the writer. But short story writers, again, the Asimov and Clarke used to be 2 of my favorites. And that's how I really got into those writers. But who else? James Tiptree Jr. is a good short story writer. What's her real name again? I'm really bad sometimes with names. Alice Bradley. There you go. Alice Bradley Sheldon. There we are. That's her. Is she born? Alice Hastings Bradley. Yeah, Alice Bradley Sheldon is better known as James Tiptree Jr. I've been reading some of her short stories this year. Pretty good, and I suppose, I've got a Harlan Ellison's. There's a new, I think The Last Dangerous Visions has possibly been published from Harlan Ellison's estate. So that would be a good, Dangerous Visions is a good set of collections of short stories. Goodness, do I have any? I do actually, but I don't know where they are. Oh, maybe it's here. Hang on a second. But is it the Harlan Ellison one? Sweet promo. Bear with me a wee second, folks. No, I'm not seeing it at all. It's about my books are a bit of a mess as always. Um, but yeah, for compendiums of sci-fi stories and stuff. Oddly enough, I used to way back when I started doing a bit of writing in my 20s. I used to send stories to L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future competition, not having a clue who they were, and sending them kind of anti-religious science fiction from Northern Ireland was quite a funny thing. But the Harlan Allison's Dangerous Visions is a good way of picking up lots of short stories and novellas by writers and different writers. And New Worlds compendiums as well, have a few of them here, from the Michael Moorcock and the New Wave stuff. They're pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. Occasionally, but there's often the greatest. It's a kind of thing. There's loads and loads of them, isn't there? But yeah. So is it Carlos is saying Pico Spill, is that the Piers Anthony series? I believe it is. I was saying to Carlos, I haven't read it myself, but it's got a good title. Sounds fun. Julian Thompson said, I also recommend The Sparrow and Hyperion and Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. Are those Ursula Le Guin ones? Ursula Le Guin. Or is that Hyperion as in Dan Simmons? I liked Ursula Le Guin. Ursula Le Guin's what I would call a thinking man's feminist. Bibliography. Let's have a wee look. I actually see what I haven't read. I noticed that there's I think there's a version of The Lathe of Heaven on YouTube, a film of it. And of course, Wizard of Earthsea is pretty good. Left Hand of Darkness was 1969. Somebody asked me a wee while back, actually, that they thought that she wrote a bit like Philip K. Dick, and I went, no, not at all. But with a caveat, actually, I was thinking that the Lathe of Heaven did read a little bit like a Philip K. Dick novel, but the rest of the stuff perhaps not. There's a word for the telling. There's King. Goodness, yeah, I've got lots to read by her, haven't I? See, unfortunately for me, I just tend to go to the bookshop and scan and see what's there. Oh, goodness. Yeah, she's quite prolific, isn't she? Translations, edited volumes. Yeah. It's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing. And you think, oh, I'd love to get all of that person's books read. And think, oh my God, what a big list, It's a bit like when it's a bit similar to whenever you find, here, I like reading epics and sagas, and go look for a new one. Here's one, I wonder, oh, how cheap would that be able to get? And you go, oh my God, it's like 28 volumes. And sometimes that's a little heartbreaking. You end up getting condensed books, I'm not too sure about Sparrow Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. Hopefully I'll catch up. There's a lot of comments between you and that comment, Julian. But if Hyperion's very good, if that's Dan Simmons. Connor Quinces can't have drone warfare without the 3 laws. Christ, it's split. New books are pretty awful. It's a very thick book, unfortunately, but I think it has been printed to order. But there's hardly any space within it. The text is so tiny to get them all into one book. But it was just for me. I don't know how much I paid for this. It wasn't much. It was about 20 quid. But it's like a phone book, and the writing in it is, there you go. It's tiny. I don't know if you can see that. It's ridiculously small. I use a larger set of reading glasses in terms of magnifiers to get through it. But it's saying that, I complain a bit about the Dune books splitting all the time and falling apart on me. There's a book that's larger than most of the Dune books, and I've been reading it away, and there's no splits or nothing. It's I've all sorts of issues about the Dune novels sometimes, But it's the sort of thing, I got a copy of what was it? The Dark Eidolon, and the back of the book had been not trimmed properly, and a bit of it was annoying. And I thought, oh, do you know what? From Amazon, the damaged book. And the only part of it that was actually ripped out of the book was a classical reference, and I thought, that's okay. I'm probably the one person who's fine with that. So that book, I suppose, was meant to be mine. But yeah, I'm a book hoarder, and some of them haven't survived as well as you would like. Da, 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 da. Colleges and Cannibals and best read this year is Werner Vinge's A Deepness in the Sky. Yeah, didn't Werner Vinge pass away this last year, I think? Or am I thinking on someone else? Werner Vinge is a big name in science fiction. As is his wife, I believe. There he is. Yes, yes. Sadly, I think we mentioned it when he passed away. I followed it all enough. I found a picture of him on the computer today. I was tidying some stuff up. Werner Vinge passed away on March 20th, 2024. What's the one you were reading there? A Deepness in the Sky. Yeah, Hugo Award winning Deepness. Let's see, he won the Hugo Award for his novels of Fire Upon the Deep, 1990. A Deepness in the Sky, 1999, Rainbow's End, 2006, novellas Fast Times at Fairmont High, and The Cookie Monster. Yes, indeed. Werner Vinge is the chap that gave, if I'm not mistaken, is the chap that coined singularity, AI singularity. And when I started off writing in my 20s, that idea was a big influence on me, if you like. So someone who I've been very much aware of, but I haven't read, unless I've caught the odd short story, which it can happen with me, but then I tend to not remember that I've read that author, But best read this year, Vinge's A Deepness in the Sky. I'll make a wee note. Yeah, because it's, again, love to read this stuff. He's not someone you'd find in my local bookshop, and I think certainly not in a bookshop in Belfast or Northern Ireland. I've never seen a book by Werner Vinge on the shelves here, which is a sad statement to make, to be honest with you. Deepness in the Sky. Well, there's a recommendation then. Connor saying, I'm backing up. So Colleges and Cannibals saying, best read this year, Vinge's A Deepness in the Sky. Connor Quinn saying, total Banks vibes in the Lensman space battles. Yes, that I really did get that. That's where I got it the most. Where can you see other things in this book? It's just the space battles and Lensman reminded me so much. So much of the was it the start of Accession, for example? That drone's trying, the mind is trying to get away from. Was it the Accession? God, I'll have to read that again. I can't remember if it's the Accession or the Lynch. Accession, if anybody hasn't read it, is the great ship book of the culture, where all the ships are involved and the mines, if you like. It's brilliant. Yeah. Connor said, I mean to read A Deepness in the Sky. I'd put it on my list too, actually, Connor. So once I get through, I have a pile of books, and oddly enough, for Chris, I've got my book tokens. Because I tend not to buy books unless I've got book tokens, but I've got some book tokens. I'm trying to figure out what to buy with them. But I've been not wanting to get any more science fiction until I get through the stuff I've got, because I've got some good ones on the go at the minute. And again, once I can put Fire and Blood down and tear into them properly, I'm really looking forward to them, because I've got that Mishima book, a Mishima science fiction book to read, and it's only been available for a couple of years, so I'm really looking forward to getting it read. And hopefully I'll maybe do a wee program and a review about it. He's a very interesting chap, and I was completely unaware, as I think probably almost everybody was, that he wrote science fiction. Mishima's a guy that I was introduced to by 2000 AD. A story called Mishima's Run. It's a Judge Dredd story. That's how I found out who he was, and I went and read about him. And then I picked up one of his books in a second-hand bookshop and just went, that's that guy from, I'll have a go with that. I can't remember the book. It was, what's the title of it? I'm really bad with it. Somebody love. Mishima is a weird chap. If anybody doesn't know anything about him, look him up. His name is Yukio Mishima. Born in Kimitake, Hirayoko. I've got something for you guys tonight in Japanese, actually. He committed ritual suicide, didn't he? Let me just catch his books and I'll tell you the one I'm thinking on. But reading the introduction to it, it's Beautiful Star. It's been It was written in 1962. It's only been made available in 2022 in English. How I would describe it at the minute is kind of a Cold War serious, almost Third Rock from the Sun type thing. But I've only read the first two chapters, so I'll get back to you on that. Connor's saying I absolutely love Burroughs, but he's quite a pulpy writer and of his time. Nothing wrong with being a pulpy writer, and he is of his time. Very much so. I think I've said this. I've said this before. I suppose that as a classicist, I have an ability to put myself into the Roman world or into the Greek world. I can do it the same thing with people like Burroughs, Arthur Conan Doyle. I can put myself into the Victorian world, and I think if you, it's a thing of it's a feat of the imagination, isn't it? Really. But I think if you can do that with a book that's out of its time or seems anachronistic in some way, you'll enjoy it so much more. I think if you can just shed your, I don't know, your cultural and temporal bias, if you like, if that's a way of putting it. And we all have them, but it's just to shed what you know, to put yourself in that time, to be a bit like that, and to have that sense of wonder, perhaps, about the newness of these things. If you think about when the Lensman series are being written, 1930s onwards, and the developments that have happened in technology just in 30 years. We were talking about Frank Herbert's Dune, initially written, started writing it in the 50s, published in the early 60s, but a 5-year period. Herbert was writing that book before the pill was developed, the contraceptive pill for women, which I think became available, I think 1961, maybe, in America. If you think about that, just we were just talking about how much technology and science has changed within this is myself and my wife chatting about this, within our own lifetimes. And then we can run that back to 100 years to what it was like in 1925. As to what it was like in 1825, our world is so different now. It's incredible. The rate of change is incredible, But it's a thing that people want to cancel books because of language, and there's a book here. People saying, "Oh, don't read this. The character is a rapist." It's our new. Yes, he is. He's a rapist. It's part of the story, and it's not in any way. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't read it. Does that make sense? And it doesn't mean that the author is an advocate of rape in any shape or form. And I actually think why I've got a question for you. I don't know if anybody wants to run this, but the question is, why is Gullyfoyle a rapist? Why did the author put it in? And it's, as I said, it's just it's a power thing, and revenge and all of this kind of thing. But why? But my personal opinion was, if he hadn't done that to the character, you would have liked him too much. He would be too much a hero, and he's not. He's as much as Gullyfoyle is an everyman, and whenever he's left to die, you feel for him, and you feel for his sense of rage and revenge. It's unhinged. It's beyond revenge of any kind. And it's wrath, it's anger would make you angry. But it's an interesting thing. Why do that to the character? It's a very small moment in the book, but it takes you against him. Immediately, your hero is no longer your hero. You can call him what you like after that, but again, we talk about heroes in Dune, and the fact that the character in this book goes to Arrakis is a very interesting thing, and that there's a creature there on the beach, and one is that Frank Herbert's worm, But the same thing that applies to the warning about heroes in Dune, etc. It's not really Frank's idea again, but what he does with it is pretty good and quite original. But I think it's a deliberate attempt to dislocate you from what you might think is a hero, because his actions aren't particularly heroic. It's a vengeance novel. It's a bit like if anybody wants to know what the Stars My Destination's like, it's kind of the Count of Monte Cristo in space. So if you know the Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, what kind of man do you consider Edmond Dantes to be at the end of the book? If you see what I mean, and what kind of man do you think he is as he goes through his process of revenge? But it's about revenge. It's not a particularly noble thing, you know. God, I probably went off. I'm on there, folks. Let me catch up with your comments. Connor Quinn says, I mean, the reader deepness in the sky. Absolutely love Burroughs, but he's quite a pulpy writer of his time. Colleges and Camels. Connor, if you enjoyed A Fire Upon the Deep, you'll also enjoy Deepness. Right, where did we get to here? And Colleges and Camels. And Gaiman knows a thing or two about. Ooh, burn. Dear oh dear, Colleges and Camels. Very good. Yeah, he's in a bit of bother in these days, isn't he? I like Donaldson's Gap series, but all his characters were deeply flawed and very frustrating ways, says Carlos. And Carlos said, A Fire Upon the Deep is the one I was thinking of. It has a great reputation. And Christopher Curry said, good night, Doc, and everyone. Good night, Christopher. Thanks very much for joining us. Let's see. I'm going to do a few top 10s just for a bit of fun, but none of them will have 10 things in them, Carlos, soon. My favorite 3 short stories are It's a Good Life, Nightfall, and The Last Question. Nightfall is amazing. It is. I love Nightfall. Nightfall will be in my top 10. The Last Question I've read as well. It's another one a bit like the 9 Billion Names of God, isn't it? There's a name for those stories. They're called Shaggy God stories, which I love the term. And actually, do you know something, Carlos? Just thinking about it, that would be a great program to make, wouldn't it? Just a collection of let's look at some Shaggy God stories in science fiction. I don't know what would my 3 favorites be, but probably I've always gone on about it. I think just for its impact and when I read it, but An Ape About the House would probably be one of mine. Nightfall would definitely be in the top 10. All You Zombies would be there. State of the Art would be there. I really like the State of the Art. That's the Ian Banks. The collection of short stories is called The State of the Art, but one of the stories within it is called The State of the Art. Goodness, what else? Oh, Philip K. Dick. I'm sure you probably know this. Roog is one of my all-time favorite stories. I love Roog. After reading Roog, kind of a weird thing, I used to drive about in this old car. It was a Mazda 323 that didn't quite work right and had been wired up wrong. It was an odd thing. I used to have these 2 spiders that lived in my wing mirrors. And whenever I turned the car on, they'd scatter into the mirrors, and sometimes they'd be hanging off. And I often started to consider, because of reading Roog, what life might be like to these spiders living in my wing mirrors, and just considering how animals think and how you relate to animals. I think Roog is a book about a dog that goes mad, basically, isn't it? It's very sad. It was one of those, I think it's in public domain, but I didn't care because I really just wanted to read it and share it. So it's on the station if anybody wants to have a listen. But yeah, I'd like to get a lot of my favorite short stories. Really is the kind of thing that I'm doing for the audiobooks, if I can get a few more done. The Mask of the Red Death's one of my, I suppose. Oh, sorry, I've jumped out of sci-fi there, haven't I? Hang on, what have I got? I'm trying to think. It's a hard one to fish from so many stories out of your memory. There's a Michael Moorcock one in a book called The Time Dweller. I can't remember the title. I think is it The Tale of Scar-Faced Brooder, possibly. I quite like that. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but it's a tricky one. But yeah, Nightfall is fantastic. I've actually got a book here called Nightfall 2 with Asimov's name on it. And have you read Nightfall 2? There's no such story. It's Asimov. Asimov's an incredible self-publicist and stuff. It's a collection of short stories by Asimov. But there is no Nightfall 2 story. It's just that's what that collection is called, which I thought was a bit cheeky. Nightfall is an incredible story, actually. Colleges and Cannibals saying good night, Chris. Bear died more recently, I think. Very sad. Is that Greg Bear you're talking about, Colleges and Cannibals? I did not hear that. Greg Bear is a man who's been sitting on my shelf for a wee while. I do think of him as a pretty good, pretty influential, a pretty big science fiction writer. November 19th, he passed away in 2022. One of the 5 co-founders of San Diego Comic-Con. That's not that had an interesting. Was there an FBI sting at the Comic-Con there this year or something like that? Forge of Gods. Yeah, I've got. Yeah, I've been waiting to read them. To be honest, it's one of those things. What have we got by Greg Bear? We've got Eon, I think. Yes, we have. There he is. I've got Eon, Eternity, and is that him? Moving Mars. So I've got 3 of his books, and I haven't read one of them yet. I picked them up at a second hand. I've got that much to get through, but I've a section on my bookshelf up here. So if you, I've got, oh goodness, I don't know if you can see this or not. Let me see. Over here. There we go. You're getting some idea. I've run out of bookshelf space. But it's a stack of books that I haven't read up on one particular shelf. But he's an author I haven't read yet, but I've got 3 of his books. I've got a couple of Ben Bovas and some Gregory Benford up there too. Though I've read one of his books a long time ago, but I don't remember it. No, I've read all of those. Yeah, it's I've got books to get read, and Greg Bear is one of them, and I'm looking forward to it. And they're a decent size by the looks of it. Sometimes it's as I'm trying to read through books that I haven't got to. It's if a book is particularly large, it'll put me off. I would rather grab 3 small books and read them in the time it takes to read one book, But I've got some old Hangline stuff up there that I haven't yet read, and as well, which I'm looking forward to. In fact, actually, I've read all of the big Hangline books. I've got a few of the juveniles there that I haven't read, as we were talking about earlier. And I've got some of his assignment and eternity stories and things like that. So looking forward to that as well. It's just finding time. But yeah, he's an author I've been very much looking forward to getting to. Matt S. says, I'm uploading my Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri fan fiction to the internet. It is good to create. It is indeed. That's a good wee game. I think you talked to me about that before, Matt S. Regarding Gully Foils, Zorba the Greek was also a self-proclaimed rapist. Yeah. It's a moment in the book, I suppose. As I said, it's often wondered why. But to not read a book because a character is a rapist is a bit daft, I think. That people do all sorts of things in books, and if that's where you draw the line, killing and all sorts of things. And goodness gracious, it was funny we talked about, because it was almost the first couple of videos I ended up doing on the YouTube channel. I did A Boy and His Dog, main subject rape, and then I did Tiger and had to talk about rape again. I thought I was sounding a bit overly interested in rape. Which I'm not, but as I pointed out, as a classicist, the classical world begins kind of with a bunch of those. With the Roman world is the rape of the Sabine women, the rape of Lucretia, and then the Greeks, you've got all sorts of things going there. Oddly enough, reading Herodotus, at the start of it, he equates some of the mythical rapes of Zeus with actual historical rapes, which is quite interesting. Yeah, they're that kind of... Matt, if you're uploading your Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri fan fiction to the internet, well, congratulations and well done. Give us a link and we'll pop it up for you and let people check it out. I need to get writing. I want to write. And I guess Conan was too. Yes, Conan's a bit rapey, isn't he? The whole Thomas Covenant series was based on rape, starting with the literal rape. Covenant commits to the figurative rape. Lord Foul inflicts to the land. I read the first one of those years ago and didn't get any further with them. Carlos Cresselia said, Matt, yeah, unless you're Dr. Frankenstein. Laughing out loud. Frankenstein's relationship to women is poor. It's what makes him the monster. Nightfall 2, 55,000 years later. Well, yeah, that's the kind of funny thing about Nightfall is that for anybody who doesn't know it, I'll just very briefly. Nightfall is about a planet that's surrounded by lots of suns. Can't remember how many exactly. And is it something like every 5,000 years so they have no night. Basically, they've just got perpetual day, and every 5,000 years, as I think, if going by what Connor said, that their society, they get an eclipse, and their society goes bonkers and burns everything and goes mad. And I suppose the book is really about someone who's trying to figure it out, scientifically what's happening to their society, and can they prevent their society from destroying itself periodically? At this, it's a very interesting short story, and it's very clever. And whenever I bought, in all honesty, Connor, I bought the Nightfall 2 thinking it was a sequel. I wondered did the guy at the end of the book, was he able to, for the next generation, if you like. But I was very, very surprised to find out, of course, that there is no such story, and it's just a way of shifting books, if you like, because I bought that book by Asimov because I thought I was going to get a sequel to Nightfall. Of course, and I read the short story of Blood Music, really good body horror sci-fi. Yeah, I don't read too much horror anymore. The horror that I read is old fashioned. It's Lovecraft and Alan Clark and what do you call it? I got that Dark Idol on there. I'm reading a few of those. That kind of stuff. But Edgar Allan Poe is my kind of horror. I used to read stuff in the early 90s, I suppose. I think late 80s, early 90s. I would have read some Brian Lumley back then, Necroscope books and stuff. My introduction to Dan Simmons, I think was somebody recommending Hyperion there, was Carrion Comfort, which is a horror story, a vampire book, isn't it? And oddly enough, I bought it because I was studying a poet called Gerard Manley Hopkins in school. Carrion Comfort is one of his sonnets of desolation. Goodness. That's the thing. If anybody's not ever heard, Gerard Manley Hopkins is a fantastic poet who invented sprung rhythm, and his poems like The Starlight Night and God's Grandeur and stuff like that. But if you read him at a certain point in his life, he's a guy he's a Jesuit priest who's kind of a pantheist, if you like. He sees God and nature and everything. He writes these most incredibly exuberant and how would you put it, infectious and joyous poems about nature. Just, oh, look at that, isn't it? It's that kind of thing. The Catholic, he was born into a Protestant family in the Catholic. He converted to Catholicism, and I said he became a Jesuit, and the Catholic Church sent him to Ireland, which he didn't like at all. And he kind of had, I don't know, you could call it a literary breakdown, at which point he ceases to become this happy-go-lucky writer of nature poems and writes these things called the Sonnets of Desolation. And it's such an these days you'd say it's absolutely bipolar. It's such a contrast, but that's how I got into that, oddly enough. But yeah, and which got me into Dan Simmons big time. And so we've mentioned there. Somebody mentioned Hyperion. I think it was it Julian there mentioned Hyperion. If anybody's not read it, it's one of the biggies. If you like the Hyperion cantos, or Dan Simmons' Hyperion is one of probably the best science fiction books ever read or ever written. Sorry. Blood Music, really good. Body horror sci-fi. I don't know that at all. Bear is an incredibly deep writer, says College's Connor. The novel is better yet. Matt S says, in Zorba the Greek, I thought the intent of making Zorba a person of bad morals was to show what we like people, show that we like people because of how they make us feel, not because they're objectively good or bad. That's an interesting. I haven't seen Zorba the Greek since I was a wee. That's what's his name? Anthony. God, he's a really good actor. I'm having a brain fart. I'm very bad with names, folks. Is it Anthony Quinn? That's Anthony Quinn. Yes, he wasn't he Zorba the Greek? When's that? Anthony Quinn. Filmography. You got one? Bear with me a second, folks. Let's see. Is that who I'm thinking of? I liked him as an actor. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's him. It's Anthony Quinn. Success of Zorba the Greek. 1964 resulted in an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. How is Zorba described here? Let's see. Zorba the Greek. 1964 drama film written, produced, edited, and directed by Greek Cypriot filmmaker Michael Kakianas. Stars Anthony Quinn as Zorba, an earthy and boisterous Cretan peasant, and Alan Bates as Basil, the buttoned-up young intellectual he befriends. The cast of blah, 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 blah. Zorba and Basil's misadventures, etc. I don't remember it, to be honest with you. It's been that long. I'd have to have another look at it. I get what you're saying, Matt. It's an interesting point. But yeah, it's why do it's a thing that I don't know. Bester does with both his protagonists. And well, I'd say both. He's got more books than that, but the two really famous ones are Golly Foyle from Tiger, The Stars My Destination, and Ben Reich from The Demolished Man, which I'm hoping to do a wee program about soon if I can ever get my act together. Ben Reich is not likable at all. And he's a murderer, and so we get a rapist and a murderer basically as our two protagonists in those books. One's The Stars My Destination, the other's The Demolished Man. One is the lowest guy possible, who ascends. The other one is the highest guy possible, who descends, if you like. One is kind of Freudian, one is kind of Jungian. They're very interesting books, but they're certainly not your average hero, if you like, or even protagonist, if you like, for the struggle. I think Gully Foyle is both a protagonist and antagonist. The hero of your book in The Demolished Man, he is the antagonist. He's the bad guy. He's a killer, and you're complicit with him as you read the book. And again, how does that make us feel? and again, as you say, it's an interesting point, because why do we follow a character like that? It's certainly not because we want to be like them, but it's curious, isn't it, to see what this creature will do. What sort of man would Gully Foyle end up being? And I suppose he does redeem himself in some ways, but it doesn't undo what he did. College says, Bear the City at the End of Time is staggering, stands up to multiple reads. Said he was thinking of Clark as he wrote this Hodgson's tribute. Hang on. That's not one. Yeah. See, I've been thinking about rereading stuff a lot as well. And one of these things I tend to think of is that life's too short, got to read new books. But as I'm getting older, my memory's not getting so good. Now, I read an awful lot of the science fiction that I talk about to you guys now. I would have read it, particularly when I was very young. City at the End of Time. I've got the Dune City to get through by the Strugatsky brothers soon as well. Oddly enough, that's interesting. When I was chatting to the parent today about English literature for tuition, She was chatting. She's asking me a question about her daughter was reading a French novel, and in this novel, there's a city, and that the city is a character in the book. And if you like, I suppose it's more to do with how she's studying the book. How would you deal with that? How can you discuss a city as a character within a book? I think it's an interesting thing. But I was explaining that absolutely cities do have character within literature. Matt SSM, my favorite short sci-fi is A Colder War by Charles Stross. Now, I think I've read something by him. So again, I do grab new. I suppose maybe he's not that new, is he? What's new to me? Charles Stross. Let me just see if he is the same guy. British writer. Or maybe I haven't read it. I've just bought it. Let me see. Bear with me. There's a couple of these. Started off in White Dwarf magazine. Interesting. Let's see. Bibliography selected. Merchant. No. I maybe have a book of his, but I haven't read it. That looks like it. Yeah, I've got a book of his. Hang on. Is that the one with cornucopia machines and stuff? Singularity Sky, I think, is the one that I've read. And I think there's a second book to it. That's all I've read by Charles Stross. I can't remember too much about it. I enjoyed it okay. But it didn't stick in my head particularly well. Colder Wall by Charles Stross. I haven't read it yet. Good one, Matt says Colleges and Cannibals. Yes, Anthony Quinn. Thank you, Matt. Yeah. I have a copy of Bear City here, being a fan of Hodgson and Clark. Have you read Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities? I have not. No. Halting State, maybe. No. Goodness, I mean, the amount of books I've read, I'm particularly, people think I'm particularly well read, but, science fiction is certainly a field you can never get them all done. Same with the classics, But no, Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities. Let's have a look at that. Is this a science fiction book? I haven't read too many Italian science fiction writers. Book review. Let's have a look. How do we describe it? Gita Invisibility is a postmodern novel by Italo Calvino. It's published in Italy in 1972. Right. Oh, that sounds good. The book is framed as a conversation between the Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan and Marco Polo. Okay. Xanadu did Kublai Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. Majority of the book consists of brief prose poems describing 55 fictitious cities that are narrated by Polo, many of which can be read as commentary on culture, language, time, memory, death, and human experience. Short dialogues between Kublai and Polo are interspersed every 5 to 10 cities discussing the same topics. These interludes between the two characters are no less poetically constructed than the cities and form a framing device that plays with the natural complexity of language and stories. In the middle of the book, Kublai asks about a city Polo never mentioned, his hometown of Venice. Polo replied, "Every time I describe a city, I am saying something about Venice." Archetypal example. Yeah, Travels of Marco Polo. We talk about that sometimes in an English lit passage to do with students for one of the exams. And Marco Polo's brother was called Maneo, I believe, but they talk about him in the passage as if he's his wife, which I thought was quite funny. Hodgson and Clark. Oh. I take it that's Hodgson and Clark, two different writers, obviously. Bear City here. You've lost me a wee bit on that, actually, folks. Oh, here, I'm having bother with the YouTube thing. There we go. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's always good to get new stuff. That sounds really interesting. City at the End of Time. We had that there. I'm gonna scribble that down. Is it a long read, Connor? Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities. I quite like the sound of that. Invisible Cities. The one that I thought was very interesting most recently that I would have read, China Miéville's The City in the City. It's the first book I've read by China Miéville. Again, the size of his books puts me off on the bookshelf, but I read it. And I really enjoyed it. And they've made it into the BBC have made it into a TV series. A mini series which I haven't had a chance to see. But what I would say is if anybody's ever lived in a society that's been segregated, like Northern Ireland, or for example Berlin, or anywhere like that, South Africa is a part. If you've ever lived in a place like that, then The City in the City is an incredible read. I think it's a sort of murder mystery about two places that sort of overlap, if you like, on top. But I really enjoyed it. You know. Yeah, that was a good one. I'd recommend it. Halting State, maybe more kind of postmodern. Says Connor. Yeah, I'm not. Postmodernism's a funny old term, isn't it? Modern means now. So after the now, it's, as much as it's, I always think that postmodernism is a bit convoluted, to be honest with you. Glaucus is a well-written character, makes Foyle look like a sweetheart. Glaucus is the character from which book? Colleges, sorry. But Colleges, where's the last one of yours? Was that from the City at the End of Time? Hudson Tribute. Makes Foyle look like a sweetheart, yeah. Apart from being a bit rapey, Foyle's not that bad, is he? You do root for him. That's the thing about Foyle. You do absolutely root for him up until that point in the book, because you feel for him. He's been left to die deliberately, and all the these people could rescue him. They just ignore him and leave him to die. And his response is totally. That's the thing about Gully Foyle. Apart from the rape, I suppose he is everything he does is almost justifiable. Yes, from Bears City. Glaucus. That's an interesting name, isn't it now? One of our sea gods, isn't he? Where are we? Glaucus, glimmering in Greek. Greek prophetic sea god born mortal and turned immortal upon eating a magical herb, believed that he came to the rescue of sailors and fishermen in storms, having earlier earned a living from the sea himself. Depending on who you read, he's got all sorts of parents. Nereus is there. Yep. Just wondering, is the character named in any way for this this Greek mythological character? Glaucus. Oh, well, all of them here, is there? Let's see. There he is. Ovid's Metamorphoses. Immortal but not immune to aging. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, there's so many good writers, Raid China, Kraken, Real Page Turner, Action, and Idea Pact. I was wondering which one. I really liked Colleges and Cannibals. I really liked The City and City. There's one of his books is like that, isn't it? It's enormous. It's thicker than this. And I just, what the heck? But I was wondering what would be a good one to choose. He's someone that you do see on the bookshelves, quite a bit. Kraken, yeah. I think I'll tell you what, I will take you up on that. I've got book tokens, folks. So what yous are giving me, we'll see how many of them I see down the bookshop and see what we return home with. But I love recommendations, folks. One day I suppose it may be a bit contrived, but we'll maybe do my best to take you through the entire bookshelf in here in terms of science fiction, just to see what we can recommend to you. But there's an awful, and I've lost hundreds and hundreds of books, probably close to 1,000 books actually got destroyed, which was real sad. The bulk of my classics library mostly, but a lot of sci-fi. Um, which is, yeah, a real shame. And funny way, it's kind of one of the things that I keep doing is, oh, I've got that book, and then I realize it's one of the books that was destroyed. So I kind of really need to do a good wee inventory here. At some point. But yeah, Greg bears up on my must-read shelf. He's next to Gregory Benford, and the books he's next to in terms of what I have to read. Oh, he's next to Larry Niven and Jeff Cornell there, The Moat in God's Eye. That's a cracking book. Infinity Shore, that's David Brin. I've got Ben Bova's Moonrise here as well. Gregory Benford's Timescape is the one that I have read. Here we go. News. Right. So, just in terms of, I suppose, science fiction, do the shelf tour. It's yeah, but I would have to move furniture off the shelves. Yeah, I suppose within this room, we've got stuff for English lit. Then we have a vast load of sci-fi, small amount of fantasy and horror, and then this entire shelf is the classical world. That one, all that plus sagas and stuff, and then some books, technical books on science and stuff like that. All of these are kind of my good sci-fi at the minute, and I've run out of bookshelves, and I need more bookshelves. I've got books and boxes and all sorts of things, but yeah. Now, just very briefly, I suppose, shelf tour. I didn't even know it was a thing, but yeah, I'll happily do it. I'll just in terms of recommending science fiction that I have read over the years, it's probably the best way to throw as much stuff at you guys as possible. I've got some really good stuff, some really obscure stuff, and as I said, it'd be good to dig out some of those collections of short stories and stuff like that as well. I've got a few rarities as well. Some things that you just won't find anywhere. They're odd little things like pamphlets and stuff of all strange little things. And then we have a whole section of over here we've got a whole pile of science fiction journals, mainly Foundation. And I've been thinking that if we can get going with a Sci-Fi Friday, possibly semi-regularly, they might be useful in terms of topics of conversation. But as we talk about science fiction, it is riddled with a lot of that stuff in particular. Oh dear. There you go. We love our books. There's the sellotape holding this one together. It was just in terms of very quickly, I'll come to this. I'll just finish off these quick shelter. Colleagues and Campbell, not sure about Glaucus' name. Glaucus is a sea deity from Greek mythology. Still trying to work out the classical correspondence. He has an aging thing, if you like. He's immortal but ages. And I think I can't remember. I think he might be prescient in some ways, if he's a son of Nereus. But Ovid's Metamorphoses, probably. So let's have a wee look at him. That's a Roman, much later source. Pardon me. I'll tell you what, Apollodorus is sitting right here. Let's just see, is he in here? Glaucus. Well, we got a bunch of them, unfortunately. Here we go. Pardon me, Glaucus. Let's see. Daughter of Atenor, Glaucus, son of Minos, Glaucus, son of Priam. Glaucus, son of Sisyphus. Oh, there we go. That's not the right one. Well, there you go. Just in relation to that. Pardon me. Hang on. Let's change. Well, in relation to cities there, one of them is a daughter. Oh, sorry. Well, one of them is a son of Minos, but one's a son of Priam. Pardon me. Let me get some fluids here. Sorry, folks. What's Wikipedia got here? This is the sea god one. Story of Glaucus' apotheosis is dealt with in detail by Ovid and barely referenced by many other authors. According to Ovid, Glaucus began his life as a mortal fisherman living in the Boeotian city of Anthedon. He found a magical herb which could bring the fish he caught back to life and decided to try eating it. The herb made him immortal, but also caused him to grow fins instead of arms and a fish's tail instead of legs, though some versions say he simply became a merman-like being, forcing him to dwell forever in the sea. Glaucus was initially upset by this side effect, but Oceanus and Tethys received him well, and he was quickly accepted among the deities of the sea, learning from them the art of prophecy. There we go. That's why I know him. John says, adds to the above story that Glaucus became immortal but not immune to aging. There we go. Another non-extant version considered in the Athenius, referring to Nicander's Aetolian history. Glaucus chased a hare on Mount Aurea until the animal fell down almost dead, and carried his prey to a spring and rubbed it with a bunch of grass that was growing about. The herd brought the hare back to life. Glaucus then tested it himself and fell into a state of divine madness, in which state Zeus made him fling himself into the stormy sea. Athenaeus also informs that in yet another version, followed by Apossus of Magnesia, Glaucus, rather than Argus, was the builder and the pilot of the Argo. During a naval battle between the Argonauts and the Etruscans, he fell into the sea and by the will of Zeus became a sea god. The herb there is mentioned as the herb grew on the island Thrinacia, is sacred to Helios and served as a remedy against fatigue for the sun god's horses. A.S. Graham of Samos informed that it was known as the dog's tooth and was believed to have been sown by Cronus. There you go. But in relation to cities, he's also a son of Priam, the king of Troy, which was the city that I was explaining about character, I suppose, brother of Asterion. Well, if he's Minos is, quite most likely. Oh, here, Apollodorus has him as there's several of them, but one of them's the king of Priam. A son of Priam is the king of Troy. But I would go probably with the sea god if you're using a mythology thing. Sometimes these names just are what they are, though. Connor saying I have to go, but it's been great chatting. I'm going to have to rip some new ebooks off a Pirate Bay. Yeah, well, soon, Doc Bile. Thank you very much, Connor. All the best. I'll probably be wrapping up a wee bit soon myself. Good night, Connor says colleges. Just in terms of, I suppose, what was on, I've scribbled down a few wee things. Just the last year in science fiction, we've had Dune Part 2 that came out in March 2024. We've just finished Dune Prophecy on the TV series. We've seen Furiosa, etc., etc. Some of the sci-fi has not been great this year, and I don't think that any particular books have stuck out. I have noticed people discussing the nature of what's going on with the Hugo Awards and stuff like that. That's in a bit of a bad way. Excuse me. But we just finished watching Dune Prophecy. I didn't really. It's hard. It's a bit different to criticize a TV program than it is to criticize a story or a book by a particular author, because there's so many different aspects to it. There's people, the production, sets, acting, all of it. On the whole, I thought most of the actors did a fair enough job, but it really did strike me as being very, very derivative of Herbert. I don't know. It reminds me on the TV series in a funny way, trying to put all the different political pieces into from the Dune world into one, almost like an origin story, if you like. I thought was a bit silly. It very much reminds me of what they did in the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie. There's a scene where you see the council of judges, if you like, and they're all killed. If anybody didn't know this, by the way, in that scene, what you have is actually a historical collection of all of the chief judges throughout Judge Dredd's timeline, and they're all killed at once. They wouldn't be in the same room together. if you see what I mean, that kind of thing. It's a way to try. The Judge Dredd movie tried to put almost everything from Judge Dredd over 20, 30 years in one movie. Let's show this, let's do that, let's bring in the, rather than focusing on one story, which is what the new Dredd did. Much, much better, But I really got the sense of that from Dune Prophecy. The reason why I was mentioning it, folks, is when I was doing my PhD, if you wanted, now I haven't seen this yet, but I've got the first episode downloaded. George R. Stewart's Earth Abides. Here we go. Now, this is my just to show you my copy. Oh my goodness, big split sellotape. Another big split. There we go. Book held together with tape. It's not a particularly long read, I suppose. It's a decent enough novel. I'm liking the size on this. The text on this, broken up into 3 sections, a bit like Dune. It's a book that I have compared Dune with. And if anybody's checked out my PhD, the videos or the actual document and read it, you'll find that this is in it, particularly in the ecological section. In terms of environmental literature that comes out around the same time, in fact, this book's not got the correct publishing. Here, hang on, am I going mad? This book's got the wrong publishing information. Yeah, this book's got 1990. I was going, what? That's nuts. 1988 and 1999. But of course, it's 1949. Just around 1950. Let me just check it out. So it's there's a TV series has arrived of Earth Abides. It's a book that's written in a similar way to Dune. And I would possibly say that it's possible that it influenced Dune. And just to show you, for example, very briefly, epigraphs, etc., etc. Just read you the blurb on the back here. Actually, a mysterious plague has destroyed the vast majority of the human race. Isherwood Williams returns from a wilderness field trip to discover that civilization has vanished during his absence. Eventually, in San Francisco, he encounters a female survivor who becomes his wife. Around them and their children, a small community develops, but rebuilding civilization is beyond their resources, and gradually they return to a simpler way of life. Just the blurb on the back, it says it's a profound poetic post-Holocaust novel of immense stature, so special I wanted mine to be the only copy, by Gary Kilworth. Written with great conviction and emotional intensity, one of the masterworks of science fiction. That's from Science Fiction, the 100 Best Novels. So George R. Stewart was a professor of English at the University of California. Published a number of novels, including 2 studies of natural catastrophe, Storm and Fire. Earth Abides is his only work of science fiction. And this is a good one. And just in terms of the environment, I suppose the reason why I brought it up was a similar time of period, similar time period, similar kind of interest, similar style to Dune. But this is, I suppose, ecological disaster, but environmental science fiction, if you like, where it's not all doom and gloom, is it? But it's, I don't know. I suppose I would just say read it. I'm kind of stumbling. It's a good book, and there's a new TV series out, apparently, first part, Earth Abides. So I'm looking forward to seeing it and maybe even revisiting this. But yeah, there's my folds. I have to unfold them. And the reason why I got this book actually was whenever I was doing my PhD, it was recommended by Andy Sawyer from the University of Liverpool Special Archives. He just went, that should be in there. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. If you see it, I mean, don't mention that book. Don't forget to mention it. Get it in there somehow. So I did, and it was a good thing to do. There's Julian Thompson saying, I have to go also night, all night. Julian, all the best. Yeah, I'm going to wrap up in a wee bit here too, folks. Actually, it's getting late, isn't it? But I just popped on to sort of say hello, by the way. That I suppose I've been quite sick over the last few weeks, and that we'll be back with our June Book Club. Chapter's pretty much done on Tuesday at 10 o'clock as well. So that was it. Really, I think, is that everything I've kind of wanted to talk to about? I suppose just the year in science fiction I thought was a bit weak. as much as everybody loved Dune Part Two, I just did not like it at all. And the more I see of the Dune film, the more I think I don't think justice has been done to it, and I'm certainly sort of curious about how Frank Herbert's been treated throughout that whole process. Um, hmm. Yeah, but the Dune Prophecy again is an odd format, wasn't it? 6 episodes. Wasn't really sure what they were trying to do. I thought some of the actors in it were very good. I thought there were some actors in it who were really struggling with very little to do or say. Um, you know, and I don't know, I thought it was a wee bit sort of almost like, how much can we squeeze in here as well? There's just one other thing. Oh, sorry, that I was. Let me come on. Mm, that I was going to mention was I've been watching. God, I love me old stuff, but I watched Secret Level on Amazon Prime. I've seen the first 8 episodes of it. The first episode was it's one of these anthology series, if you like. It's based on computer games, mostly I think are games. Um, and I suppose the one that I thought was really good on it, the fifth episode on it is Warhammer 40k, which I haven't played since the 90s. And it's called "And They Shall Know Fear," and I just thought it was really, really good. And the one thing that kind of caught me about it was I was looking a little bit into it and was understanding the history of Warhammer 40k and where they got all their ideas from, where all the stuff that they plagiarized or borrowed or blagged or designed even. Um, and I've actually, this the idea, grimdark, isn't it? Is the term we use now for this genre. And I was just looking at some of the stuff and going, goodness gracious. Now, the people that invented Warhammer 40k, just to let you know, plundered the hell out of several things. One of them was 2000 AD. And in particular, I suppose if you want to put together the whole Warhammer 40k thing, they took the chaos aspect heavily from Michael Moorcock's universe, his multiverse. Even initially, if you look at the initial drawings, the armor and stuff of the Space Marines very similar to the armor you'll see judges wearing and things like that in 2000 AD and stuff. And initially, they did that. It was a bit similar to looking like a judge, I thought. But one of the other things, I suppose, Starship Troopers, the stuff that comes out of 2000 AD, things like the VCs. Particularly, but what occurred to me is that there is one thing that I can see influencing Warhammer 40k more than anything, and I'm very pleased to say I've been reading them again, and these are from. So you'll get people to tell you the grimdark kind of thing. Warhammer starts in the 80s. Here we are. This is your original grimdark here, and Warhammer 40k steals and steals and steals from this. But this is Nemesis the Warlock, and this is from the 70s. And this has your termite empire, all your mankind hunting the aliens, the deviants. Be pure, be vigilant, behave. The termite empire of man against all aliens. And the details in this book, if you like, these books. So I've got the first 4 here. Of the original Nemesis, the Warlocks. These are the old Titan books, and I've just been reading through them, and particularly just the setting up of Torquemada and the giant mechs and stuff, and the look and feel of it is incredible. The first 2 books of these are drawn by Kevin O'Neill, written by Pat Mills, and the second 2 are done by Brian Talbot, who really kind of brings it into a kind of steampunk thing. And these are the stories where the ABC Warriors return and all. This is grimdark as hell. I'm not joking. If you read these, you'd just be spitting your tea out your mouth and going, my God, how much did Warhammer 40k just steal outright from all of these different things, But it's particularly with Nemesis. I was just reading a bit about grimdark and the history of this genre, and I'm just going, whoa, no, you've got to go back. But I'd say there's even earlier stuff probably. But Nemesis is all over the Warhammer 40k universe. It's a real. I'm actually surprised that he's not a part of it. And the Emperor would be Torquemada, I suppose. The Emperor you know. But the deviant, be pure, the whole crush the alien and this, the attitude of it's all there as well, The VCs was a fun, just rereading it as well. It's brilliant. Um, that's for any, goodness, the VCs is kind of and again, if you understand the Starship Troopers connection, sorry, not Starship Troopers, but also to the Forever War, which is kind of Joe Haldeman's military science fiction book, which is really an allegory for his 3 tours in Vietnam, isn't it? Well, this is this is Jerry Finley Day, who are the artists here? Who have we got? Oh, it's McMahon, Mike McMahon, Judge Dredd artist. Yeah, pretty good. Jerry Finley Day is kind of one of those guys that was great with the British War comics and stuff. Again, this is kind of the Vietnam War in space. VCs are vacuum cleaners. Space, that's their nickname. Space Marines, for want of a better word. And it's got very much the attitude of soldiers in the Vietnam War, if you like. Very, very good, very well drawn, very well realized. You've got to get a clean nuke, But that's the complete VCs there. It's 2 volumes. Great stuff. Golden era of 2000 AD again. And again, a lot of this stuff, that's really the core, I think, of what Warhammer 40k took from it. I remember looking at the original Warhammer 40k books, looking at the artists and stuff and recognizing a lot of them. But you'll see that they were in 2080, and that there's a look and feel that's come across. But essentially, they plundered the hell out of Nemesis the Warlock, and I'm not complaining about it. I love Nemesis the Warlock. If you see what I mean, it's a bit like Frank Herbert taking so many different things, same as George Lucas, that you can't say he stole really or plagiarized. It's taking so many different things. Was it great writers, bad writers steal, great writers, or great writers borrow? Was it bad writers borrow? Sorry, great writers steal, don't they? But just look, even the visual aspect of it. But I've been reading it there, and if anybody's not read Nemesis the Warlock, there's 10 volumes to it. And probably he's one of my 2 favorite 2080 artists. Just to give you a wee look at this, the work in it is exquisite. Look at that, and you get the real, as you say, grimdark, really gothic. You see the guy there in his bed. Am I pure? I used to have that in my school bag when I was a kid. I had on the back of it, "Be pure, be vigilant, behave." There you go. There's the Turkey Armada. It's all the things that you'll see in Warhammer 40k are in here. But it's an exquisite set of comic books, and I'm absolutely loving reading them. But I don't have the other 6, unfortunately, so I'll have to pick them up, But there you go, folks. It was just a wee thing I noticed, So yeah, if anybody hasn't seen it, Amazon Prime, Secret Level. The first one was okay, Dungeons and Dragons one. Pardon me. It's another one of these animated anthology series. By far the best of them, I think, was And They Shall Know Fear, which is the 5th one, which is the Warhammer 40k one. Very, very good animation, very good little story. Really enjoyed it. I've only seen the first 8 though, because that's all they brought out, and I understand that there's a bunch more of them up now. But they weren't all as good. I suppose they're something similar to Love, Robots, and was it Love, Death, and Robots? That kind of thing. But instead of sort of hard sci-fi fantasy, this kind of thing, it's more focused on games, But there we go. Well, listen, folks, that's been great tonight. I'm just science fiction, having a wee chat. I popped on to say hello because it was Science Fiction Day. Though I do think that naming it, running it with the 2nd of January, I don't know. I would go with H.G. Wells's birthday or something like that. If you see what I mean. But yeah, that's what I've been reading. I'm watching, hoping to see some more science fiction this year, get some more books and stuff. But we've got some good recommendations from you there, folks. We've got The City at the End of Time and Bio of a Space Tyrant and Kraken. And that Italo Calvino's Invisible City sounds really interesting. Cities, the city and the city, and as I said, I'm about to read the Dune City. It's one of my books that I didn't get to this year, but it's the Strugatsky brothers book that I own that I haven't read yet. Little cities, there we go. Yeah, that's interesting. I mentioned city, and with one of my students, and we get a whole slew of things there. That's fantastic. Well, listen, folks. Thank you very much for joining me as always on my little late night chats here. It's all about guerrilla and low key, but I appreciate all of you joining me as always, and I've really enjoyed the chat tonight. And from Connor's reaction, I think a shelf tour might be required. That sounds like I never thought. Yeah, I'll have to see if we can maybe get something to do with that and run through it, or maybe I'll tell you the best thing would be for me to organize those books in alphabetical order before we do that, because they're an absolute mess at the moment. I don't even know how I have them organized, to be honest. I wouldn't call it that. But there we go. But yeah, I'm going to be I'm going to watch. I'm going to get the girls to bed here in a minute, the doggies, and then I'm going to pop on and watch Earth Abides, the first episode, and see what it's like. And that should be interesting. As I said, it's a book that's useful to compare to Dune, and if you haven't read it, it's you can see mine's quite damaged from a read. It's a good read. It's a good book. It's again a science fiction novel by someone, 1949 environmental disaster. It's an interesting thing. Someone who doesn't generally write science fiction, and I'm always interested in people like that. Sean Winston, thanks so much. This was great. No worries, Sean. I enjoyed it myself. Sitting in the house tonight, and I was working towards the book club, and I've still got a couple of pages to do, which I'll finish tomorrow. So that's why I didn't run with it, and it's not our normal day really. But I thought, there's the 2nd of January. Asimov celebrated his birthday. It must be Science Fiction Day. Not that I've ever seen much to celebrate it or anything like that. I think it's a kind of a non-event, isn't it? I don't really know if anybody is celebrating it or talking about it apart from us. But yeah, why not? The one I'd really like to get online for, that I haven't been able to do, that I'm hoping to do this year, is I'd love to do a program on World Towel Day. I'll just go nuts for Douglas Adams, and I think it's been linked into something to do with Terry Pratchett as well. I think a celebration of those authors, that would be good fun. That would be a wee bit down the road. The other thing she says, I'm going to see the Rocky Horror Show this year, which is, I've been waiting for this for a long, long time. So my wife's bought us tickets. So where are we going to see it? In July, we're going to go see the Rocky Horror Show, which is not great sort of sci-fi horror. I love it. Love to have a chat about that some night as well. But I've never been to see it. I'm actually going to see the show, so that's great. But listen, what I will do is say goodnight, folks. Thank you very much as always. I hope you're enjoying your science fiction, whatever you're reading or watching or listening to, or however you absorb it. I hope it's good stuff, and gets the old brain going and makes you think a little bit and makes you wonder. And yeah, I look forward. It's been a wee while since we've done one of these sci-fi chats. I'll have to see if we can get them going up a bit more often. It's good to just talk about the field and share with everybody what you're reading, what I'm reading, what you recommend. Recommendations have been great tonight. And as I point out, science fiction, it used to be a small field. It isn't anymore. It's massive. It's huge. Doesn't matter who you are, you'll not get through all of those authors and all of those books. Our best bet is to get through as many of the good ones, the good authors and the good books as possible, I think, But that's what we aim for. And you know what? No harm, but we do enjoy our pulpy science fiction as well. It doesn't have to be high literature to be good sci-fi, I think, But there you go. So I'll say goodnight from a country that doesn't produce science fiction. I hope you have a happy new year. And I'll be back on Tuesday at 10 o'clock GMT with chapter 21 of Children of Dune. So in the meantime, folks, look after yourselves. Be safe, and remember, no matter where you go, there you are. And I'll say good night. Take care. All the very best. Good night. Da 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 ba 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 ba.